And let me start by quoting from a review of this novel, Atlas Shrugged, that appeared in Newsweek. It said that you are out to destroy almost every edifice in the contemporary American way of life, our Judeo-Christian religion, our modified government-regulated capitalism, our rule by the majority will. Other reviews have said that you scorn churches and the concept of God. Are these accurate criticisms?
Yes.
The core of Ayn Rand's amoral philosophy and worldview was an unabashed exaltation of individualism. Any concern for the community was, she believed, naive collectivism, which, in her view, was a slippery slope towards Bolshevism. Rush Limbaugh once referred to Ayn Rand as a, quote, brilliant writer and novelist. Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson said Rand's novel, Atlas Shrugged, was a foundational book in shaping his worldview and political philosophy. Former Republican representative from Wisconsin, Paul Ryan, said that Rand, more than anyone else, did a fantastic job of explaining the morality of capitalism. It's, he said, that kind of thinking, that kind of writing that is sorely needed in the world. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, who was named in honor of the nihilist author, likewise hailed, "I'm a huge fan and I've read all her novels." Ayn Rand is the truest representative of the neoconservatives' Darwinist vision for America, one where the individual is responsible only for the individual and selfishness is a virtue. The neocons' worldview, as espoused in Rand's novels, was a stark departure from the old guard conservatives' more moralist worldview. For many years, both political parties mostly agreed on the basic Enlightenment era values first championed by Jesus Christ of Nazareth, that those with power were morally required to aid those without it, especially by helping the poor navigate out of poverty. The Republicans and Democrats, of course, often disagreed on the policies to foster these moralities, but both generally agreed on the importance of helping the poor in order to ensure as strong a nation as possible. That belief changed in the decades after the 1960s. Poverty is now widely deemed by the likes of Louisiana Representative Mike Johnson as a result of an individual's own moral failure, and that can't actually be solved by a secular government. After the resounding defeat of the Republican John McCain in the 2008 general election by the upstart candidate Barack Obama, the neocons who ran the GOP had some soul-searching to do if they hoped to remain relevant in the fast-changing American political landscape. After the 2008 economic collapse, GOP leaders knew that they desperately needed a rebrand. GOP megadonors like the Koch brothers and Ellison family, however, had no interest in living in a society that adhered to the teachings of Jesus. They instead wanted to live in Ayn Rand's world. Hope and change after a decade of calamitous war waged on a set of lies with money borrowed from future generations of Americans, concomitant to a historic economic disaster, all of which were presided over by neocons who championed Ayn Rand's nihilistic worldview, and who had gained power in the year 2000 in no small measure due to a poorly designed butterfly election ballot in Palm Beach County, Florida, and a Supreme Court shaped in part by the first Bush presidency, were at last cast into America's political wilderness. So much so that the first Obama administration managed to pass the Affordable Care Act, which, just a decade earlier, seemed a delusion dreamt up by the Democrats' most socialist adherents. The GOP's megadonors feared more than ever since before World War II that the nation had begun its inevitable and long-feared backslide towards Rooseveltian socialism, which they simply could not or would not abide by. What, in this seemingly nascent age of hope and change presided over by a black man with sympathies towards working people, was the GOP to be? The party of Ayn Rand or Jesus? That was the conundrum the GOP had to wrestle with if it wanted to remain relevant. Being the party of Jesus was, the GOP's heavies decided, out of the question. That tact could logically lead to redistribution of their immense fortunes to the very poor people the GOP's most moneyed and ideologically driven donors had deemed lazy, stupid, and undeserving of their affluence. Secluded in their gated residential enclaves, in key-carded think tanks, the party's brass, set out to remove the proverbial people from the polity. The conservative donor class knew the party needed to seem to be what American people in the wake of 2008 craved most: populist leaders who espoused the teachings of Jesus Christ, but all the while being policymakers as self-interested and unconcerned with the needs and wants of others as Ayn Rand was. The GOP thus began relentlessly branding itself to the American people as a populist tea party and defender of Christianity in a country in which a secular big government boogeyman sought to deprive them of their amendments, particularly the first and second of the 10, all the while forcing gender and racial equality onto public school students who were mandated to take vaccines. Donald Trump stepped into the GOP's leadership breach in 2015 by descending a gold escalator in a New York high-rise apartment that he, despite bragging about not paying taxes and having already declared bankruptcy 4 times, owned. Trump twice won an American general election by selling America's most socially conservative voters that he, and he alone, was the man to protect and defend any voter who, for whatever logical or illogical reason, felt threatened by Obama's presidency. Trump's genius was turning the most destitute, independent voters in the country, and its wealthiest, into his voting bloc. Meanwhile, the political party he now helmed dismantled social programs that aided the poor, working, and middle classes, concomitant to reigning in institutions that could limit corporate power and corruption. It did not matter to supporters that Donald Trump bragged about sexually assaulting women, not paying his taxes because he was, quote, too smart to do so, nor that he was an elitist New Yorker who any critical thinking person could see was the antithesis of a populist hero. Trump's glaring and egregious perfidy and his lack of character was no matter to supporters because the party was backed by another neocon and Ayn Rand fetishist named Rupert Murdoch. The Australian media mogul bought his American citizenship so as to skirt federal law and then bought an American TV station, which, by the time Trump descended the escalator in 2015, presided over the most powerful propaganda machine in human history. Fox News could, Murdoch and Roger Ailes were certain, transform Trump, the man who above anyone else unwittingly personified Ayn Rand's worldview, into appearing to be the preeminent protector and defender of Christianity and crony capitalism, all the while trampling on any legislation meant to help anyone but the donor class that paid to dupe Trump supporters into believing that the former reality TV star, this embodiment of Ayn Rand's reptilian worldview, was somehow anything but the antithesis of Jesus Christ. Donald Trump's entire life is antithetical to the life and teachings of Jesus Christ. That fact has only been magnified in the 47th president's orgy of retribution, corruption, and violence, both at home and abroad.